Subscribe or I'll bring back Kelp Dome and make all of the map just great. No inkables, just great and pain. What's quacking, everyone? I hope you're having a fantastic day today. So maps are this amazing thing that we all have to play on in Splatoon. They're fun, they're great, they have different verticalities, different designs, how they're set up and played. Maps make this game fun. Their unique designs are way better than other shooter games, and it makes Splatoon feel unique in more than one way along with other Splatoon elements. Now, we all have map mode combos that we like or dislike. You know, back in the days of Splatoon 2, you'd have that Arowana Moray Towers rotation, you know, either Rainmaker or Clams, and everyone just wouldn't be playing ranked that day for that specific rotation. So, you know, you have your map modes that you like and dislike. I have maps that I absolutely adore in this game that I would play on all the time. You got Humpback Pump Track, such a fun map, has nice curvature and everything. You got, you know, Mahi Mahi, just such a fun map. It's so good and small. It's like a battlefield where you're just constantly fighting people. You got your ink blots. It's so good, so amazing, so fun. And then you got maps that you just want to come back into the game, like Gobi Arena. It was just such a fun map, and I yearn for it to come back. And then you have maps that you absolutely hate, that you despise, that you wish Nintendo would just delete them from the game. One such map for me is Flounder. Now, compared to Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3, there is less maps that I would like to not play on in 3 than 2. I can name a few in 2, but in 3, I don't really want to play on Mincemeat or Flounder. Those are my two maps. And today, the first map I'm tackling is Flounder, and how I think it's absolute garbage. And honestly, I'm going to compare it to another map that we all hated in Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 1, Moray Towers. Both maps are absolutely abysmal, but I was thinking about it. I was cooking it up in my head. I'm like, you know what? Is Moray worse than Flounder, or is Flounder worse than Moray? Moray is way better than Flounder. Hands down. Like 100%. Moray is better than Flounders, and I'm going to break down as to why. Feel free to disagree with me or agree with me in the comments. I'd like to know your opinions, but I'm going to get into it. I'm going to break down their structures, and I'm also going to go over each individual game mode. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so starting off on Flounder zones, I'm going to go over each individual game mode and the map layout. So right off the start, you have your starting area where you just jump into, which, you know, obviously that's where everyone's going to jump into, and it takes a little bit to get to the center of the map where basically all the fighting is going to happen. And because it's zones, the zone is basically going to take fight in the center. My biggest issue with this map is its verticality with that little hump in the middle. You have these alleyways that you can come up and try and flank, but the issue with flanking is if you're playing against people with very strong awareness, you are not getting those flanks off. Those are obvious flanks. You are going to basically get killed right off the bat if you try to approach from those flanks, which is an issue. And then you have this bridge down here as well, which basically when people are basically shooting over that little hump trying to shoot at each other, which they're going to not hit each other, there's going to be ink fall off that hits under the bridge. So if you try to flank under the bridge, you might get hit with enemy ink, you're going to be stuck down there. And if an enemy sees you jump down there, they can react to what you're trying to do and just get an easy kill. They can just, you know, pop onto the side, kill you, easy. And again, that huge hump in the middle is the biggest issue because it cuts the map off. And I feel like a lot of weapons on this map just don't feel good. The only thing that really feels good is like sloshers and some like decently long range shooters like a Jet Squelcher and maybe a Nova just only feel good because they have like the range that can like kind of get there. But basically for the most part, you're just throwing projectiles and hoping that you hit each other across the map. And if you're lucky enough to get a play, sometimes with how stale this is, it's so easy for the enemy team to come back. They have the walls on the side to just come up and shark and jump over and kill you. And the way you have to move and get over the hump, it's easy to just pick you off if someone has good aim. So let's say you get a pick and you have the 4v3 advantage. It's easy for someone on the enemy team to still see you and just fire right back and pick you off as well. So it's super annoying trying to deal with that. And that is an issue with this map. The weapon diversity on this map feels terrible, and how stale it is because everything is just so obvious and like right there in your face. You can get picked off easy and people can just defend with projectiles, and that is the biggest issue with this map. It's just a giant stalemate, and it's so hard to do anything on this map, especially against people who have good awareness. Now compare that to Moray Towers. Moray has some verticality to it. It's high up. You got this long distance and you have these ramps that you can go down, and you know, it takes a minute to get to the objectives. However, that is the only issue so far with stuff with Moray, is getting down those long stairs. Once you're down, all of the objectives take place in this pit right here. And this is where I feel like weapon diversity for Moray is a lot better. I feel like I can use basically any weapon I want. If I want to use a blaster, if I want to use a charger, you know, if I had an E-leader right now, I could probably hit the other side as well. If I had a sniper, I could pick people off that I'm seeing. If I had a shooter, I can move around and shoot. And there's also little divots around, so if you're playing a more closer range weapon and you need to move around, you can. There's walls that you can get up. And there's a lot more freedom and movement in this area. And again, you're not running up these giant stairs. If you do capture zones, you can push in because zones just stay there and you can push up. But with Moray, there's a lot more freedom. So it's easier to get out of spawn camping with Moray, in my opinion. I haven't had an issue with getting spawn camped on Moray. So there's a lot of different ways you can get down from Moray and you can see people. Compared to Flounder, where it's like your jump in is just right there. It's easy to just push in and just keep you there. Compared to Moray, where there's a lot of options and a lot of movement you can do in Moray, and especially on zones. And there's a lot you can do. So it's like, compared to Flounder, even though this is a double zones, the zones are closer together, and it's easy to just fight for the zones and pay for them and keep them and get picks and stuff, and you can see more than Flounder, where you're just throwing projectiles and trying to get over this hump and use only certain weapons that can work well on the map. So Moray feels a lot more fluid in this aspect, and this is just for zones as well. Now, Tower is probably the game mode I hate the most on Flounder because of how the tower is positioned. The alleyway is still normal, still flat, but how the tower is positioned in this game mode is absolutely abysmal. And the checkpoints are also just absolutely garbage. So basically the tower is also on grates, so it's super hard to like try and get up towers. You can fall through if you're not careful, if you don't have the tower painted enough. As you just see, I fell through trying to jump in, and as long as you're trying to like jump on the tower, it's fine. And then when everyone gets to the center, it's trying to fight for the tower as well. That can be an issue because of the same issue with zones. You're trying to throw projectiles over, and now you have another obstacle in your way to try and shoot over. So it's an absolute nightmare. And then when you finally get a push, you're at this first checkpoint, and people can just come over that wall and absolutely stall out this checkpoint. That is, all of these checkpoints are easy to stall out and stop people from getting these checkpoints. And then the second checkpoint that's right here on this elbow is maybe the easiest one, but again, with a lot of well-coordinated specials and good blasters that can play on this map, because I feel like towers, you can use blasters a little bit more liberally than, you know, other game modes. You could just get camped out at that checkpoint. I've had so many overtime games that is either won or lost at that elbow checkpoint. There's been no other further push. And then this final section, it's right by their spawn. They're just going to spawn in and just keep killing you off that tower nonstop over and over and over again. And it's going to stall out the game. And that's why games feel super long on Flounders, because of how close the objectives are and where their checkpoints are at, or where they're at in specifically, that make these games feel so long and just go into overtime. And yeah, you just have people spawning in, killing you on tower. And that's what, it stalls out in tower. Now, compared to Moray's tower, it has one less checkpoint on the map. You just run down, run to the tower, and the checkpoints, they're still in a little bit of a chokehold place. Like, you can easily stall out the game with tower in Moray. However, these checkpoints can be easily combated against if your team's good at doing it. But on this checkpoint, I can see we're getting overwhelmed with booyah bombs and other things could be an issue. Because again, you're not getting on these towers for free. You're not getting on these objectives for free. People are able to just push in and get you. So this is an issue with this area. However, you can see over that little ledge right there, and you can basically see everything. So if you have people watching tower, it's good. And in this area, it's easy to defend. You can see everything around you. So the games feel less likely to stall on Moray compared to Flounder, where they're so enclosed and it's hard to see where things are. But on Moray, it's like, oh, I can see where people are, and you can kind of just get through these big checkpoints if your team's coordinated enough and stomp people out with Moray. Now, Rainmaker. Rainmaker is another one that just feels like the game never ends. And as I've been talking about, the entire theme of this is basically Flounder is just a giant stall match. Because I feel like I've definitely had a lot more overtime on Flounder than KOs. And it's just a massive stall fest. So Rainmaker's in the center, on that little hump. You're going to fight for it. People are going to fight for it. It's a little easier to gain mid control because whoever gets first pop is definitely going to have the advantage on Rainmaker for sure. So you want to go for that first pop on Rainmaker Flounder to make it easier. So once you get that pop, it does, kind of give you some leeway. And especially if people get a little bit too close. But the checkpoints for this first one right here, super annoying. So, it's in that little elbow again, so it can be camped. So if you're trying to go for this one, it's going to be difficult to just deal with it, especially if you get the Rainmaker on the pedestal, because then they're going to use a lot of specials. If they have good AoE, they're going to cover that elbow really nice. But if you get to this one as well, it looks fine at first. But that's when you realize they can still do the same thing. It's still another elbow, so it's just this enclosed crevice. And then if you look, they have a little ramp over there, a little ledge and platforms over there that cover that specific section from spawn. So they can go from spawn and just collectively crowd around you on top and just stop you from pushing forward. There's so much stalling that can happen with these Rainmaker checkpoints and how this map is laid out, that this Rainmaker is probably one of the better modes for this map. So it's not too egregious, but you can stall people out if both players are just having the awareness and they're really covering objective and playing objective. It's not that hard to just sit there and just have a back and forth for a while on this map with Rainmaker. Now, Moray is where I feel Rainmaker actually gets to kind of shine in a way and not, feel insanely horrible, because there's little rails that you can get on, the inkables that you shoot and you can swim up them. On Moray, if you get a wipe, you are rewarded heavily on this map by being able to swim up those ink rails and just score. I've had a game on Moray that took about 30 to 40 seconds. We wiped, ran up, you see that inkable rail, you just ran, swim up, boom, right there at the very end. You're done. You're done. You finish the game right there. And that's why Rainmaker on Moray is just so rewarding. If you wipe or you push them and force them back really quickly, you can just jump up and just go score. and it's not even an issue. And that's where Rainmaker definitely feels a lot better on Moray. Like, it's still bad. Like, if you lose, it's still bad. You can still kind of stall people out with the verticality on Moray if things don't go your way. But if you are a better player, you are heavily rewarded on Moray compared to Flounder, where it feels like you're not getting rewarded that much. You're getting stalled out, or you just barely make any progress because it's how the spawns in the map is set up. They can just come in and stop you easy. Boom, done, you're gone. And especially if there's no respawn punisher or haunt and they're running QR, it's like they're coming back faster and stopping you. But on Moray, even with that comeback and everything like that, and QR getting back to you faster, it's still more rewarding on Moray because you can just jump up, swim up, boom, you're there. And if you're playing better than the enemy team, you're rewarded so heavily by just jumping on these railings and using the map to your advantage. And that's why Moray is 100%. I'd rather play Rainmaker on Moray any day than Flounder, because it feels like these games on Rainmaker Moray can just fly by, but there are times it can take longer. Now, Clam Blitz on Flounder is kind of alright considering you're moving around the map. The alleyways are different. There's a little lip and a ledge that you can utilize as a flank. It's still pretty obvious. But for the most part, Clam Blitz on Flounder, I don't have too much of an issue with because you're utilizing the whole map. So Clam Blitz is the only game mode that I also feel like your weapon picks feel a little bit more open compared to the other game modes like Zones or Tower or Rainmaker. And Rainmaker also does feel like it opens up your weapon picks as well. But on Clams, it feels like you can kind of use whatever you want if you're more comfortable with a certain weapon. It feels a lot easier to use that weapon on Clams. But Clams can still stall out because there's these little pockets on the side, like on the elbows, that people can camp and stop you from pushing in. And that's really the only issue I have with Clams, but also because of the platforms on the side, people can still stop you from scoring. It's still easy to stall you out from scoring on Flounder with, again, how the map is set up, how these platforms are set up. So it's like they have a very clear view and vision of you to where they can kill you, as you have to constantly be looking up. They have the high ground. You don't have the high ground. You're getting cut in half and left in the lava. That's what's happening on this map. So because of this high ground, it makes this map very difficult and, again, stally, because either the enemy has their advantage against you, so they can just stop you from pushing, or you're stopping them from pushing, and it just feels like this tug of war that really only feels like it's won when you can get multiple wipes and you're just a better player. Like, if you're just a better player, it just feels like you're able to slog through this map and get the wins pretty quick, compared to Moray, where it feels like if you're just slightly better, you can still win compared to this game mode. So Clams on Flounder is probably the best one. It's a toss-up between Rainmaker and Clams. For me, honestly, I think I prefer Clams because it feels a little bit more freeing. But yeah, Flounder is just absolutely terrible with its geometry and how it's set up and how you have to play on it. And it's just, ooh, it's so bad and annoying. Now you compare it to Clam Blitz on Moray Towers, and my god, is Clam Blitz on Moray still better than Flounder? Because, again, you're only fighting in this little pit. You can use whatever weapons you feel like. You can have someone on the perch up here looking down, seeing where people are at, getting information for you, or you're doing it. And if you're playing with people in a group in a league, you can figure it out. League, remember that. But besides that, like, it's still easy to move around. You can still see things, and you still have to have awareness as well. You still need your awareness in this game mode. So and then once you get kills, it's easy for you to push in and get rewarded. However, it's also easy for the enemy team to come back and, push back. It feels like a very fluid back and forth, more natural than Flounder, where it's just like the baskets in front of their spawn, they're just going to spawn in and have super armor and just absolutely decimate you, and you only scored like one power clam because you were running around the whole time trying to pick up clams. As for Moray, all the clams are right here. Once you get into a fight, a little skirmish, you get some kills, you get your clams, and then you run up and score, and then the enemy team has a chance to come back. So it feels like a very fluid back and forth dance, and then again, whoever wins, heavily rewarded. You are super super rewarded with Moray if you are the better player, for sure. You actually you feel the gains on Moray compared to Flounder. I've had games on Flounder where I'm decimating the enemy team, but it just feels like I'm not winning. I'm not getting what I need. But I've had games on Moray where I'm decimating the enemy team, and I'm like, wow, I scored. I won. Let's go. And again, I know it's based off personal experience as well, but it's something I've also seen. I've watched a lot of people play on Moray. I've watched a lot of people play different game modes over these last 2 years that I played Splatoon 2. I saw everything, and then on Splatoon 3, I'm watching people do the same, and it just feels like a whole different world from viewing other people's, how they're playing between the different maps, and it's like, wow. Clam Blitz, so much better than Flounder, and again, Moray's just a better map than Flounder in general. They both suck. They both absolutely terrible, but the worst of the two, Flounder by far, because of its verticality and how it's laid out and everything. It is just a terrible, ungodly map compared to Moray. If they announced Moray in the game, I think the worst rotation would probably have to be Tower Control, Moray, Flounder. That would be the worst rotation ever, but I would hope that if I play that rotation, it would be a one map rotation of me just getting Moray non-stop. Even though I dislike these maps very much, I still think they're still super fun to some degree, and it's just fun to play this game. All the maps are super fun in this game, and I think the maps are what make this game unique. It's not entirely what makes it unique, but maps are just a part of it with how they're designed, how they're laid out. Yeah, some are bad due to their layout and how they're played on, but for the most part, if you're just shooting it up in Turf War with your friends, these maps can be just a lot of fun and chill out, and that's why I love this game so much. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.